Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Ninja Knight. Make sure you like the video, make sure you share the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you. So this video is going to focus on what Marvel should do, in my opinion, with Black Panther moving forward. I want to start this video by saying rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. His passing has absolutely devastated Marvel fans, devastated his family, his friends, his colleagues, and all of the fans and the people he's been an inspiration to around the world. I think this mural that was unveiled by Disney is absolutely beautiful, and I just want to say how difficult it is to replace and to move on from an individual like Chadwick Boseman. This video isn't going to talk about someone being recast as the character T'Challa, because I personally feel that when an actor has such a response the way Chadwick did, it's impossible for another actor to fill that shoes. Similarly to when Heath Ledger passed while he was the Joker, I think Chris Nolan made a decision at the time not to make the Joker return, and to let that character basically lead and live on in our hearts and in our minds. So with that said, I'm not going to be talking about a recasting of T'Challa. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is what I think would be a good story, in my opinion, that could fit with the MCU. And that is what Black Panther 2 should do, and what Marvel could do next. Now my choice for Black Panther, the next man to step into those shoes, is Bucky Barnes. And I think a lot of people will be curious as to why I've chosen Bucky Barnes, and I hope during this video I can explain why I think Bucky Barnes is the man to step into the mantle of Black Panther. Obviously, to Marvel fans, Black Panther and Bucky Barnes have big history together in terms of Civil War. Bucky was framed for the death of King T'Chaka, and for a large part of that movie, Black Panther thought that the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky Barnes, was his man. They have a common enemy then in Baron Zemo, who framed Bucky and who also has had massive problems with the Avengers. This is a character that I think could feature later on in this story, and he will in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now this guy is a guy from Sokovia, and somebody that had been affected by the Avengers. So I think it would be quite fitting for this character that pops up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier to have a long lasting effect in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. In The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we're going to see, in my opinion, Sam Wilson become Captain America. So this is a sort of passing of the torch, and I think in this series it could certainly lead into more to do with these movies. I think that Doctor Doom should play a big part in what we're going to see, and the theme of the movie, and particularly with the fourth Black Panther, and I think it's a theme that we could follow in Black Panther 2, is the issue of monarchs. So what happens when monarchs decide to move in on others' territory? We've seen Killmonger try to become a monarch in Black Panther 1. We've seen M'Baku try to become a monarch in his own right in Black Panther. We have seen Sterling K. Brown's character try to be an outside monarch and try to usurp King T'Chaka at the time whilst he was in the USA. So I think Doctor Doom having a big play in this could be absolutely very interesting. I think as being King of Latveria himself, I think you could tie him very well into Ulysses Claw and into Baron Zemo, and have this guy be the one that sets plans in motion. But I think this film is going to feature a different villain, and I think that Doctor Doom could essentially be the one that pushes that villain, or perceived villain, into the direction of Black Panther in this movie. And that is Namor. So I think Namor the Submariner could be the monarch that tries to threaten the land of Wakanda. Now I know what you're saying. Okay, but how is T'Challa being absent and Bucky Barnes going to work out? Well, I think at the start of the movie we are let in and we are let known that T'Challa has done some diplomatic missions, but he has similarly gone missing. Or possibly he has vacated the role of Black Panther due to wanting to do more diplomatic work, and he sees fit that Bucky Barnes could be the man to step into that role. I think that is something that T'Challa might do, because he knows then in his heart of hearts eventually it will go to Shuri, and in the meantime he has a good man in steadfast in Bucky Barnes. And I think I'll tie that into another comic thread later in this video. So I think that Namor could be an interesting character that Bucky Barnes is trying to acclimatise to the role of Black Panther, and in comes Namor. He has some sort of grievance with Wakanda, whether it be the technology or whether it be something that Doctor Doom has set in motion, that the Wakandans have maybe encroached on his ocean, or due to the events of the Avengers, particularly in Endgame, and the subsequent events after that, Namor has a grievance with Wakanda particularly. I think it could make for interesting viewing, and I think the fact that Bucky Barnes is a super soldier could work out really well in terms of him being able to fight Namor. Which leads to my next point. The heart-shaped herb is something that we've seen Killmonger destroy, and the last remnants of that be given to T'Challa in the first movie. So I think without this heart-shaped herb, it's a very difficult way to play Shuri into being Black Panther when she has actually no way of having a physical advantage against someone that is super powered. So I think perhaps maybe within this movie, and maybe in the third movie in my opinion, you could have the search for a new heart-shaped herb, or some sort of formula that Shuri could inject or that she could take for her to become Black Panther. And I think we could see that sort of happening over these next two movies. We could see a mentoring of Shuri into the role, because I personally don't think Marvel should just stick Shuri into the role of Black Panther within Black Panther 2. I think you need a recognisable face, and I think you need somebody that has been par for the course in the Marvel movies since more or less the beginning. I think you need a assured individual, and I think Bucky Barnes would certainly bring those people in. So I do not think that Shuri's ready quite yet. Maybe in the Black Panther 3 you could start to move her into this line of thinking. I think by Black Panther 3 she does take some sort of heart-shaped herb, or some sort of, I suppose, substitute for that heart-shaped herb, or maybe some sort of super soldier formula, something that could be written into the script so that during this movie she is trying to search for that along with Barnes as Black Panther. Perhaps maybe Namor or Doctor Doom possess something that they could use, and maybe Namor at the end could, after been arguing and fighting with Black Panther, turns and does give it to them, and that means then that Shuri can assume that mantle. But I think what's important here in this movie is the issue of monarchs, and I think that Shuri wouldn't be someone that would want to be queen. I think you're going to have to use Angela Bassett massively in this movie to see over, to provide, to protect Shuri, and allow her to come to the conclusion that perhaps T'Challa's way of thinking of democracy and this sort of group thinking of different groups within Wakanda would be the best way to move forward, rather than one all-round monarch. And I think Shuri could be a character that you could use in that circumstance, in my opinion. Now, what I think they should do with Bucky, particularly if he's suited up as Black Panther, I don't think the Wakandans should know. Perhaps maybe have Shuri give him some sort of technology that says he can't be seen without the Black Panther suit, and he only speaks in Wakandan. Why do I say that? Well, he spent an awful lot of time in Wakanda, so his Wakandan would be very strong in my opinion. It would be another layer that they could add to this movie, that the characters would speak in Wakandan. We have seen that in the first movie, and I would love to see that return. And I think it would be a good idea, so it could disguise who Bucky really is then to some of the Wakandans, and so that there wouldn't be an all-out revolt, given that Bucky is not a monarch whatsoever. Now, why have I chosen Bucky? I've chosen Bucky because I think he is a character that has lasted the test of time in these Marvel movies. He brings an awful lot of different issues with him as a character, and I think he's very interesting. I think he would be a good understudy for Shuri, and Shuri would be a good understudy for him, so that they could both learn from each other, and then that he could eventually hand that role to Shuri when the time is right, because I do think that Bucky Barnes would relinquish that role very much so, and very easily in my opinion, once the time is right. Maybe write in something that maybe T'Challa's choice was for Bucky to ascend to that mantle, and then for it to eventually be handed to Shuri when the time is right, given the fact that he does have the super soldier serum, or a version of it, within his veins. This is a big story in my opinion that they could actually lean into, And it's the James Rhodes, who's also known as War Machine, and when he assumed the mantle of Iron Man. So James Rhodes in the comics, he assumed the role of Iron Man at times when Tony Stark was way too belligerent and way too not in his right mind, in my opinion. He assumed the role of Iron Man. Other times as well too, it's shown that James Rhodes, to hide the personality of Tony Stark really being Iron Man, James Rhodes became a sort of bodyguard as Iron Man for Tony Stark. I think you could play with a similar theme. I think you could play with a similar idea with the Bucky Barnes character. I think Bucky's Black Panther could be a very good bodyguard for Shuri. Now, Shuri obviously needs not much protection of her own, as we've seen in the first Black Panther movie, but I think if you're going to have monarchs trying to invade the land of Wakanda with the disappearance of T'Challa, it would make for brilliant viewing, in my opinion, that there was a Black Panther to stand beside her and defend her and really take her through sticky situations. I think you could see a very good and strong bond being developed between Sebastian Stan and Letitia Wright in the roles of Bucky Barnes and Shuri. I think that this could be an interesting movie that you could move in different ways. You could have the two characters on the run. You could have them based in Wakanda. I think maybe a character story on the run from the likes of Namor would be very interesting. I think maybe going to Latveria would be another interesting point that they could move towards there and try to sort things out. I would use the plot point that they've used in the comics before, in that they have a character that's not quite always that same character being in the role of the main named superhero. We would see then Bucky Barnes becoming Black Panther, I think, over the course of this movie, and I suppose you could start out within the first 10 minutes of him accepting that role and for him being that character. Now, why have I chosen him? Again, I'm going to reiterate. He's been there nearly since the start with Captain America. We've seen how he has been in Winter Soldier, and I think that that's an important plot point. I think it's mainly in Marvel's view that they would never have Bucky Barnes become Captain America. I think they are all for giving that to Sam Wilson, and I really respect that, and I really support that one, because if it's not going to be Steve Rogers, I think Sam Wilson is the best choice, because I think that that is a character that hasn't showed the flaws and the issues that Bucky Barnes had. Why have I chosen him as the Black Panther? Well, I think what we've seen in the first Black Panther movie with T'Chaka and how flawed T'Chaka was. We've seen how Sterling K. Brown, his character, was flawed. We've seen how T'Challa himself could be flawed. And I think that that is something that we could then bring into this movie. We've seen that T'Challa himself wants to open Wakanda to the world, and what better way to open it up than to an individual who had been really scrutinized in the past in Marvel movies, and somebody that has become extremely trustworthy in Wakanda. We've seen how much Bucky was valued within Wakanda when he was given a vibranium arm, and it's very clear in the Black Panther movie they do not just hand out vibranium to anybody, let alone a full arm. The next point I'm going to make is that Bucky Barnes is already in the frame of a superhero. You could do flashbacks as well too within this movie of showing him learning Wakandan, and that could then give us time then as well in Black Panther 2 to acclimatise to the idea of Bucky Barnes being the Black Panther. We have seen him in the comics be the White Wolf, and that maybe could be something that they could look at perhaps in Black Panther 3 when he hands the reins over to Shuri being Black Panther. He could then assume the role of White Wolf. I think that that could be a very strong possibility in my opinion. Second movie though, I think would be really interesting to see where the Falcon and the Winter Soldier leaves off. If Marvel haven't quite finished that one, I would certainly be strongly thinking of Sebastian Stan as the Black Panther. He brings a marketability. He would bring fans to watch it. Certainly there's an awful lot of people that are interested in viewing things that Sebastian Stan is in. He's very marketable as an individual himself. He comes across very likeable as an individual himself. And I think because, like I said, there is those flaws in that character that could work nicely. He could have a lot of self-doubt as being the Black Panther. He could have this overbearing protection of Shuri because he was implicated in the alleged assassination of T'Chaka. I think that Bucky feels himself, he would feel himself as a character that he owes it to Wakanda. He owes it to them to give it back to them as much as possible. And like any Marvel movie, it could potentially end with his sacrifice and Shuri having to take over the role and perhaps reverse engineering some of that serum that was within his blood. You could do multiple things with this character, in my opinion, and that is why I think that this character of Bucky Barnes stepping in to the character of Black Panther would be the right thing to do, in my opinion. It would be a clever thing to do from Marvel's point of view. In the second movie, I think you give the Panther an all new suit. I think that that would be a very good way to distinguish Sebastian Stan's Bucky Barnes Black Panther from T'Challa's. I would potentially retire that suit then that T'Challa has worn. And like I said, it's going to be very difficult to explain to right away the disappearance of T'Challa, but I think they need to think of something very quickly, and they need to think of something very strongly. I think for an awful lot of actors, assuming that role of T'Challa would be an incredibly overwhelming task. I don't know, and I don't think that there wouldn't be an awful lot of actors up to that, in my opinion. I do think that there would be people out there that would put themselves forward for it, but I think it's very difficult to come close, in my opinion, to the significance that Chadwick Boseman had as Black Panther. And that is why I'm thinking at the moment that Bucky Barnes would be that character. I think he can assume the role of Black Panther. I think most people could say, yeah, he does possess those powers. He does have a vibranium arm. He could face off against multiple individuals. It's believable. I think you need time to build Shuri. We've seen her in Black Panther. We've seen her very small glimpses of her since then. And I think you need a movie again with her to build her up as a character before I think the general audience, the fans, can accept her then as being a Black Panther. There are a number of issues as well too with Shuri becoming the Black Panther. Where is the power going to come from? The heart-shaped herb. And that is why I'm putting perhaps Doctor Doom and Namor into the scene here, that they could have something, some sort of agreement. Namor could possess something that the Wakandans want, but has an overwhelming urge to try and take over himself, and that there is mixed wires, crossed wires, and that Doctor Doom is behind it all, along with Zemo. I would love to see sort of maybe a retread in a way of the Winter Soldier, where there's sort of political games happening. And I think with those games, it could then create a nice tense movie, and you could have multiple characters that feature in it, along with this story as well too. Seeing our Infinity War, I think when you see that super soldier Steve Rogers running and he catches up with Black Panther was one of my favourite moments of that movie, to see how powerful Black Panther is, but also how powerful Steve Rogers is, and it really highlights the power of the super soldier serum. This is why I think that Barnes is the best man for the job, and I think rather than recasting the character, which I think would be, in my opinion, now I said like it's my opinion, I think would be a disservice to Chadwick Boseman, the same way it would have been a disservice to Heath Ledger to recast the Joker for the Nolan trilogy. I think it would be a disservice to Chadwick Boseman. So I'm asking Marvel, I'm suggesting to Marvel, think about using Bucky Barnes as the Black Panther for maybe one movie, or perhaps moving forward until Shuri is right to take the reins, because I think that ultimately that is the way that Marvel are going to think about it, and I think that is ultimately the way Marvel are going to go about it. This character is a shoe in my opinion. They've done a lot of the groundwork unknowingly, in my opinion, by the fact that he's been comatose in Wakanda. He's been helped by the Wakandans, particularly T'Challa and Shuri and the various other Wakandans there that are within that country. So I think it would be appropriate for Bucky to give back. We've seen him disappear at the end of Infinity War, but I'm sure Bucky Barnes is the type of character he is, with the way he wanted to help out Steve Rogers and the way he enlisted, would certainly be a character that would want to help Wakanda in its greatest time of need. He would want to help Wakanda at the request of T'Challa, at the request of Shuri, and I feel that he is a character that could definitely exemplify that, and he could bring a new face to the role, and also it would be ultimately respectful, in my opinion, towards Chadwick Boseman. That's my thoughts on it. I think that Bucky Barnes would be a very good stand-in until Shuri comes along. Do you feel the same way? What way do you think that Marvel are going to go with this character? Do you think that they're just going to implement Shuri as the Black Panther and hope that everybody supports that one? Do you think if they use the stories that they have done in the past and used it for Bucky Barnes here, for example, as the Black Panther, would you be more accepting of that? Looking at some of the comic books as well, when some characters have assumed roles, like the way James Rhodes has assumed the role of Iron Man as a bodyguard, and also as Iron Man when Tony Stark was ineligible to be Iron Man. Do you think that they could use that plot line, that storyline, in a way here? Who do you think should be the villains for the next Black Panther movie? Do you think that Namor the Submariner, who has been talked about quite extensively over the last number of years, could be the villain to move forward with in this movie? Do you think that Baron Zemo and Doctor Doom could be issues that could focus on in this movie? We have a lovely ability, I think, as well too, with Bucky Barnes, that you could see him throughout time as well too, and how he could involve himself, perhaps even with Wakanda itself and previous kings of Wakanda, previous Black Panthers. And maybe it would give him an insight into what it means to be a Black Panther, what it means to be king of Wakanda. Would you feel the same way? Do you think ultimately it would be a good idea for Bucky to assume the role of Black Panther, and when Shuri is ready, when there is a enhancement ready for her, that he gives her the role and hands the baton to her as T'Challa would want to do, and assumes the role down of the White Wolf? Would you think that that would be a favourable way for Marvel to go? Let me know in the comments what you think. I always love engaging with the fans. This is a character that I absolutely love. I love the character of T'Challa. I love the character of Black Panther. And it really saddens me to think that we won't see that character, particularly T'Challa, for a long time, in my opinion. It's very saddening, and I want to say I pay my deepest respects and sympathies to Chadwick Boseman and to his family and friends and colleagues. This is a very difficult thing to talk about because I am such a big fan of the character himself, and I feel so strongly about how powerful Chadwick was to go to work every day, to be that character, to be that hero to people, and to be that hero as well too for the children who are watching this. The way he went to those hospital wards, the way he spoke to those children, knowing himself what he was going through, and he always kept a smile on his face. I have absolutely nothing but respect for Chadwick Boseman, and I feel, in my opinion, that this is probably the most respectful way things can be done without recasting that character and honouring that man's legacy. I'm going to leave the video there. Make sure you like the video, make sure you share the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Good luck.